Are you guys tired of not winning your fantasy basketball leagues? Well, in this video, I'm going to cover 3 major tips that you guys need to know before you draft your teams, and that will help you win your leagues, or at least be a lot more competitive than you have been previously. Hey guys, this is the talented Mr. Taco from the Daily Sporting, bringing you all the insight that you guys are going to need in order to really, take that next level with your fantasy basketball. I want to cover 3 main points today for your fantasy basketball season, or tips that you can use for your fantasy basketball season that I think are going to be really important, especially for when you're drafting. And then 2 of the tips are really before you draft, and 1 is really when you come after the draft. So the number 1 tip that I have for people is you got to know your settings. So before you play your league, the number 1 thing that you have to do is, if you're on Yahoo, this is the way to go. You go into your league, and then you go settings, and then once you're in the settings, boom, you get here scoring and settings. It's similar to find it on ESPN. I haven't played ESPN in a little bit, so I don't know exactly where it is, but basically, the first thing you have to do is check your settings. Why do you want to check your settings? Because you need to know how points are scored and how are you going to win. Because depending on how points are deviated to players will really depend on how you want to draft them. So in this league, this is just a standard Yahoo public league. When we look at it, it's a standard category-based system. Now, when I say it's a category-based system, let's take a quick look and show you what that means. So when I go over here to matchups and you see I'm facing another team, this is what we're going to see here. We're going to see field goal percentage, free throw percentage, 3-point points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, turnovers. The standard 9 category fantasy football or fantasy basketball scoring. Now, with this scoring, you basically just have to win 5 of the 4 categories in order to win each week. So some people might be like, I want to have a level team that can do good in all categories and try to compete with that. And that's a viable strategy depending on who you have, who's your base. But in a lot of instances, you might be better building a team that's concentrated around 5 categories or 6 categories that you know that each week you'll be able to pull out, and maybe weaker in about 3 because it'll give you a better chance to consistently win each week. That's one thing that I've always done that's helped me out and win fantasy basketball championships, is that I like to hoard big men. The reason why I go for big men, and I go for a specific type of big men, I go for big men that can block shots and shoot good free throws. The reason why I go that way is this: they have low turnovers, they have high blocks, they have good free throw percentage, they get solid field goal percentage, and then you're talking about rebounds and points. So you're talking about 5 to 6 categories where these big men will dominate. Now the question then comes down to, who did you get for your first pick? Because depending on who you get your first pick will depend on what you want to do to build out. Like if you get a guy like Giannis, okay, a guy that's great all around, but he doesn't really get you the 3 points, okay, doesn't have the best free throw, and has high turnovers, I may be looking at guys later on that, I don't really care about turnovers at that point, because, I have a guy that's going to give me, high turnovers off the jump, so I'll say I'll give up in turnovers, but instead what I'll do is I'll make sure I focus on guards that can shoot the 3 and get good free throw percentage to help balance Giannis out. And if it was a situation, maybe like an Anthony Davis, who's great across the board, but really doesn't give you that many assists, you may want to double down on getting some point guards early on to give you some assists so you're competitive in that. Or maybe you say, hey, I'm not really going to go for assists in this particular instance, and I'm going to build a team to really emphasize on the things that we do well. Let's get, more rebounding, good shooting. Let's get free throws. Let's get some guys that could shoot threes and just build on what he does well. I think that really depends on who you see there with your next pick and who you're eyeing later on in the draft. When you go into the draft, you definitely need to have some sort of strategy, especially when you're playing categories, because if you just start drafting a bunch of guys that do everything kind of well, you might be in a situation where you'll be a good team but not a great team. When you're facing teams that are really stacked in certain things, you may lose, and that may put you down to losing, even a 4 to 5 matchup where you're down by one category, because guess what? Some categories that you normally do well. This team built more rebounds than you and had better field goal than you. So normally those are categories you take, but the other team built that up so well and you didn't have enough on the other places to win. So it really depends on what you see early, what you're going to target late when you're thinking about building in a categories-based draft. And I think this is the hardest type of draft that you can do for fantasy basketball is a category-based draft. The other kind of scoring that you could do, okay, is a points-based scoring. Now, points-based scoring is a lot like fantasy football. I'm sorry, I drew a blank there. But basically, it's a lot like fantasy football, and it's like fantasy football in the aspect of basically instead of you having to worry about categories and who does what, it's you get the player that's going to get the most particular points. So if you look at the way the scoring is, a field goal made is 1, a free throw made is 1, a 3-pointer is 2. So obviously 3-point shooters off the bat get a huge bump. Rebounds are 2, assists are 2, steals and blocks are 3. So if you have a 3-point shooter that gets good assists, that gets good steals and blocks, that's huge. If you get a 3-point shooter that could double or triple double, you're talking about blowing everyone out of the water in this particular league just because of these settings. So, at the end of the day, this becomes almost one of the most important things that you have to look at is how the points are broken down. Because if you just go into this league and you're just drafting guys and you're not realizing, hey, triple doubles are huge, then you know what? You might pass on a guy like Russell Westbrook, not knowing that in this kind of a league, Russell Westbrook could be a top 3 pick now that he's been traded to the Wizards, and he's going to be in a situation where he's going to control the ball and be the number 1 guy. So to me, with that trade of John Wall and Russell Westbrook in a points-based system like this, I'm very eager to get a guy like Russell Westbrook. Now, if I'm going on the flip side and I'm looking at a categories-based scoring system where I have to run all these categories, I'm not as interested in Russell Westbrook from the mere fact he's going to have a lot of turnovers. He's going to have a low field goal percentage. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that he's not going to be a top 7 pick in categories, but depending on how you want to build your team, you may gravitate away from him and actually look like at a center or a player that plays a position that you don't find as easily and that builds around the categories that you like or that you want to be building toward as you draft. So I think that's something that's very key that you have to look at in a points-based league, especially where I'm seeing that the double-double and the triple-double is so prevalent and you get so many extra points. That's something that you have to factor in. You need to be going guys that get double-doubles and triple-doubles, because guess what? A triple-double right here is like 2 3-pointers, which is 4 points, and then that's 6 points as far as points go. So that's 10 points for that. For if you get 2 3-pointers, 2 3-pointers scored is 10 points because it's 6 points in points scored and 4 points in 3-point made. And you get field goal. Now, yeah, I think you would get field goal made as well. So this really means that 3-point shooters also are very valuable just because of the way they score points. It's just that extra bonus. So these are things that definitely you want to look at, definitely you want to be planning for, and this really, to me, just bumps up big men that could shoot threes. Why would I say this bumps up big men that could shoot threes? Because they're going to be the easiest to double-double. Okay, so if you don't get a top guy, if you don't get a Harden, if you don't get a Westbrook, if you don't get a Luka Doncic or a LeBron James, I want big men that could shoot threes, because not every team is going to have a center that can knock down threes and get those cheap points, which then I can build up players like that throughout my roster, have good depth, and maximize my points. Because at the end of the day, that's what we really want to focus on, is building your points up. Now, in this type of league, let me just see if I can get back to it. So let's take a look at some of the players and just look at how the scoring went. So preseason current fan points. Okay, so this is an average, okay, per game what they were scoring. So based on those stats, last year we saw James Harden was scoring 97 points per game. Anthony Davis, 81 points per game. Okay, let's just sort it by points. Look, Harden 1, Antetokounmpo 2, Doncic 3, James 4, Towns 5, Lillard 6, Young. See, you're seeing big men and point guards. Big men and point guards. Why do you see big men and point guards? Because they're the easiest to double-double. It's the league where you want to get a guy that you can know could double-double. Why? That's what the scoring says. Normally, that's not a scoring setting that you have, but in this league it is. Because I checked what the scoring system is, I was able to get that huge advantage, and it's something that going forward I can strategize to my team and try to build up and build out. One player that a lot of people got last year who was really solid and that really helped people out was John Collins. John Collins put up numbers last year. But one big thing about John Collins this year that you have to factor in is that they added in some huge additions. You have Clint Capella. You have Dino Gallinari. You have Bogdan. So with adding all these guys in there, the level at which you expect Collins to perform at this year is really not there. It's not something that we can really think is going to be at the same level it was last year. And that leads me to number 2. Check your players, check the situations, and kind of figure out what's going on. In this situation, John Collins is not someone that I'm looking at as much because I don't think he's going to repeat those stats. I would much rather go for a guy like Russell Westbrook, who if you think about it, would probably be going a lot lower on Houston than he would be going on Washington. Why? Because on Houston, you have him and Harden kind of sharing it, going off of each other, and James Harden put up crazy numbers last year, but would you take him number 1? Maybe, maybe not. He gets the ball a lot, he scores a lot, but then you have Russ there, so it became almost a situation of there's only one ball, how do we expect them to play out? Last year they did really well, but can they repeat it? And this year it's a situation where I think you might have to look at Harden as, I want to say the number 1, but you have to really look and see what's going on with him personally with that organization. Is he going to play? Is he going to be the same player? I think that makes him a little scary. It makes him a little risky. I think all things considered equal, I think I might have Luka as a number 1 player right now, or an Anthony Davis if I'm looking for a big man. But just based off the scoring from last year and seeing the way that this league works out, and you're seeing that, you know, Luka has a big double-double and triple-double rate per game, I think I might go Luka. You know, it was pretty much between Luka, Antetokounmpo, Harden. You know, I think it's pretty solid that you would go between those 3. Anthony Davis, I think, offers a ton of upside this year because we do figure that LeBron James is going to be resting a little bit more than usual, just from the mere fact that it's a short turnaround in the season. He has a lot of wear and tear on the body, and they're playing for the postseason. They're not playing for the regular season. So LeBron James does scare me as maybe a top 5 pick, only because I'd probably want to go with the guys that I think are going to get more, and then after the top 5, really be looking at him. So, obviously I'd be looking at Harden, Antetokounmpo, Luka. Damian Lillard was a baller last year, and I expect him to ball out this year as well. Anthony Davis, I think Russell Westbrook with his trade in a league like this definitely moves way up in my board because he's a triple-double, double-double type guy that's going to consistently put up big numbers, and especially on a team like that where he's going to get the ball back. I think that's someone that you really have to look at as someone that was going lower before because of a situation that you want to elevate back up. Joker is another guy that, you really like, especially when you consider that he's a center putting up these numbers. But if you look down, there's a lot of centers that have put up numbers between Nurkic, Collins, KP, Vujicic, Sabonis, Drummond, Embiid, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony Towns. So there's a bunch of big men that you look on the wire that you see that are pretty good. But let's see how quickly these points drop off. And these are things that you have to realize. Most league settings will show you that you have 2 centers that you want to start. So it puts the premium on centers pretty high because look how quick things will jump off. We're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So KP came as the 10th highest scorer, but there's about a 30-point per difference per game between Antetokounmpo and KP, and they all play the center. Now, I think this is a big thing, too, that they have Giannis with center eligibility, which is great, because Giannis at center, to me, makes him almost a no-brainer number 1, especially when you look at how quick these points drop off. Okay, now, just for context, let's get you a point guard drop off. Okay, so you got Harden 1, Luka 2, James 3, Lillard 4, Young 5, Westbrook 6, Irving 7, Simmons 8, Lowry 9, Steph Curry is 10. there's also a 34-point difference between Steph Curry and Harden. Now, the question is, do you think that it's going to end up like this? I do expect Kyrie Irving to have a better year. I expect Steph Curry to have a better year. I think Simmons can have a better year. I think that Young is a really solid option. I think Fox is going to have a better year. I think Drew Holiday has great upside. I think that Russell is really, really good. So when you look at some of these guys at point guard, you have a lot more trust in them than, let's go back to center. And we know guys like KP aren't going to be back off the riff. But, once you go cast KP, Collins, that's a toss-up. Whiteside, we don't know what kind of minutes he's going to get. Siakam's really solid. Now, that's a really solid guy. Talking about 30-point difference. Bam Adebayo. I love Bam. Bam has great upside. Gobert really doesn't score for you. He puts up the double-doubles. He's a solid guy. But if you look at these guys, there isn't the point guards. Like, you believe in a lot more of the point guards outperforming their positioning than these big men. Other than maybe like a DeAndre Ayton, maybe a Rudy Gobert, you think. But, I mean, Rudy, based on the way they play, I don't really see him doing much more than what he did last year. And he was a phenomenal shooter. He had a great field goal percentage, but field goal percentages really don't matter in this type of a league. When you look at the settings, and I'll just bring that back up for you and just show you again why settings are one of the biggest things that you have to look at once you know your player situations. Because look, there is no percentages, so you can get a guy that chucks and ducks, you know what I mean, guy that just throws it up there all the time, shoots horribly, but that won't affect you, versus when you're playing in this other league right here, where your field goal percentage is something that actually counts as a full category. So when you see the difference in the settings, see the difference in the scoring, you really now have to think, okay, this is how I'm going to build my team in order to win, because I'm going for percentages, or because I don't need to worry about percentages. So these are two things about knowing your settings and knowing your players in the situations. Because if you know, like, let's just say, a guy that you look at the end of the draft, or not in the end of the draft, but like a Mitchell Robinson. A Mitchell Robinson is way more valuable in a category league like this than he is in a points league like this. And the reason why I'm going to say that is because of field goal percentage. Mitchell Robinson's field goal percentage is astronomically high, and that's one of the things that gives him great value. But he doesn't rebound at a 10 rebound per game clip. He doesn't get enough points for you to be like he's a monster scorer. But it's his percentages, high percentage, low turnovers, that makes him really valuable. And that's something that you have to really look at and understand before you take your players and before you draft your team. Because one, you want to know what kind of scoring you're getting, and then you obviously go into the situations of, okay, were there changes in the team? Did things happen? X, Y, and Z. Is there a guy that you look at, like maybe like Blake Griffin? Like Blake Griffin off the riff, not that interested. He's kind of injury prone. He's playing for a bad team. But I also think there's a chance Blake Griffin will get traded, and Blake Griffin may end up on another team, and all of a sudden we're looking at it like, yo, wow, Blake's upside really went up. Like, there's a chance he can end up with Golden State, I feel like. Just in the mere fact we know they don't like Wiggins. I think Griffin has maybe like one more year left in his contract. Griffin is a great fit for that team, just because he can shoot the three, he can take it to the post. He isn't a liability as far as ball movement or sticking the ball. He can pretty much play off ball. He can play in the post, and really take that more of an on ball presence when you have a guy like Steph on the bench. And I feel like a guy like Blake Griffin is someone that, I'm not going to reach for, but if he falls to my lap, I'm not going to say, well, man, Blake is so bad. I would worry about his injuries. Yes, his injuries are something you have to worry about. But his situation, it's not that great in Detroit. But I don't think he ends the season in Detroit. And things like that, or as you get in the draft, that's something that you want to start thinking about. Because guess what? That value can go up real quick. And it really changes the way you look at some of these guys. Guys like Obi Toppin, how much are they going to use him? How much do you expect him to get play? Because guess what? He might not go drafted in some leagues. And then in other leagues, he might go really high. And it's a big unknown. But a player like that is something where you have to see where you feel comfortable getting him, because he's a guy that could really be valuable if you expect him to get a lot of minutes. So that's why you got to know your players and know your settings. And I think those are the two biggest things that I know pre-draft. Post-draft, the number one thing that I got to say, which is be a third tip, is you got to play the wire. That's one thing that I realize in fantasy football, a lot of players don't do, or they do it somewhat. But playing the wire is one of the most vital aspects of fantasy sports. Why? Because guess what? No one drafts 100%. It just doesn't happen. You're not going to draft a team that's stacked, and everyone hits. It just doesn't happen. You're going to have guys that don't play good. You're going to have guys that get hurt. You're going to have guys that underperform. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to substitute for them. You're going to have to change guys out. You're going to have to flip things. There's going to be situations where you draft a guy at the end of your roster and you expect him to get some burn, and he doesn't. And then what do? You just kind of let him sit? No. You need to be scouring the waiver wire, seeing what the playing times are, especially in the first 2 or 3 weeks. In the first 2 or 3 weeks, you really want to be monitoring the wire, seeing who's getting the playing time, seeing who's hot, seeing who the coach is like, and then making your decisions accordingly. Because, like with the Knicks, we don't know what the rotation is going to be. We don't know what the point guard is going to be, right? So no one's going to draft these point guards. But then if we find out if Frank Ntilikina becomes a starter, and we're seeing, wow, he's getting steals, he's getting blocks, he shoots a decent percentage. Wow, this is a good guy. And you're looking at a couple of guys on your roster who aren't really getting that much time or aren't really performing. That's a move you might want to make, because you're realizing the trend. And the trend is being, wow, the coach as basically moving Frank as a starter. He wasn't drafted. The guy that I have on my bench is playing the 6th or 7th man role. Frank is going to be getting about 15 more minutes than him. Let me pick this guy up. That's kind of how you have to look at it, because there's certain situations where, maybe it doesn't make sense to drop him, because, you're thinking about a month he'll be better because he's recovering from an injury, or the guy in front of him is super injury prone, and you like this guy's game and he just needs an opportunity. Those are all things you have to look at. You have to understand what's going on the wire and who do you have, and what does it project out to be. Because I see a lot of times guys keep people on their team that aren't that great, or that are playing meh, or people that are injured. You're going to leave a guy that's injured on your team just because you don't think there's anything better on the wire. And I'll tell you, that's never the case. You're always better off trying to add someone new, get a different player onto your team, and just keep upgrading. Because as they say, in football, you're only as good as your worst player, or same thing in basketball. You're only as good as your weakest link. And when injuries come, this is going to be a COVID season, so we know that's going to factor into it. There's going to be players that can go down all the time. They may test positive. They'll be out for a couple of games, and next thing you know, you're scrambling to replace them, and you need someone to step in, and you don't want to lose the games. That's why having a deep bench is really going to be helpful, especially in a season like this. But those are the 3 main tips that I have for you guys. I'm going to be giving you a lot more updates. We're going to try to do a fantasy basketball weekly podcast where we can really break down and show you what's been going on and what could possibly come up for the next week. A big thing that, like I said, that you have to look at is games played. Games played is huge in basketball, just for the mere fact that, if I'm playing 4 games this week and the other guy's playing 2 games, guess what? I have a 2-game advantage on him. There's nothing he could do. The only thing he could do is maybe pick up a guy off the waiver wire that plays a couple of extra games to rotate into his roster for the week to get some extra points. And that's something that I definitely do, and I definitely look at. I might make a waiver wire ad for a guy that's okay, but you know what? He's playing 3 games this week, and I'll play him this week and drop him next week and pick up another guy that plays 3 games just to get extra stats on it. So that's how you got to be thinking when you're using the waiver wire. Like, who am I going to get? How am I going to maximize him? How am I going to maximize my points? How am I going to maximize my roster? And once you start thinking like that, you'll start being able to play that 3-dimensional chess with your team and really start planning yourself out and getting yourself to the championships and to the playoffs and winning, period. That's how winning is done. All right. But I want to thank you guys so much for your time. If we gave you any value, or if this helped you out any, please, give us a follow, share it to your friends so they can see. I don't know how much you want to do that sometimes though, because you don't want to give your friends all the secrets, right? Because you want to win. But, I just appreciate you guys taking your time to watch these videos. All the support that we've gotten is unbelievable. I'm so grateful for everything. And, yeah, this is the Daily Sporting. We give you fantasy tips and tricks so that you can win your leagues. We appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm out. Peace.